Hey everybody, surprise! I haven't done a Facebook Live in about 3 weeks now, I think. And I thought today was as good a day as any other to get started. So I'm gonna just fill you in a little bit on what has been happening around here because there are some good reasons why I've been absent actually. And I also know that it takes a few minute or two or three for this video to show up in your Facebook news feeds. If you're watching this on YouTube, hello, how are you doing? And I see people are already joining us, so hi there. Have you ever gotten a kid off to college? Well, this was my second year of getting my daughter off to college. Hi there, everybody. And it's been interesting. So her dorm consists of 2 bedrooms, each with their own private bathroom, which is really cozy. My old college dorm room was 1 room, and I think we shared a bathroom either with each other or with people in an adjoining room. And so my daughter has a very nice setup, but there were lots of things wrong with her dorm room. So we went up there, my husband came the next day, and about 2 weeks later, we went back up to take care of a few things. And in the middle of all that, I had to get my son registered for dual credit classes at a community college. Do you know what dual credit classes are? I didn't know. Basically, they count as college credit. He has to get a minimum grade of a C. They count as college credit, and they also count as high school credit. Now, since we homeschool, that is not like such a hard and fast rule as far as the homeschool credit goes. But nevertheless, they're free. We have to pay for the books, and I think we paid maybe $150 or so for some kind of activity fees or something like that. But to get a total of 6 college credits for just the price of books, it's a really good deal. And if you have kids or grandkids that are in that age range, you might want to find out if a community college near you has the dual credit option. We even have, I think, 2 counselors there that work only with dual credit kids. So, but I got to tell you, getting him registered for those dual credit classes, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Imagine sitting in a DMV for a long time, finally getting called upon, and then being told that they need to have your blood type. You don't know your blood type. You have to go back and take. It was like that. It was like a maze of getting through all the college registration stuff. So it's done. It's done. He is in his 3rd week. Hi, everybody. Nice to see 50 people so far. That's nice. He's in his 3rd week now of community college classes. He's getting a taste of what college is like, and we will see if he launches into more college or if he changes his mind. I don't know. Nowadays, there are so many options. Some of you, maybe my age or in this age range, you know that high school counselors always told students, you have got to go to college. And I remember my counselor, Mrs. Brannigan, telling me that I could be an engineer. What kind of engineer do you want to be, Lisa? With no thought at all to the fact that I don't have an engineering brain. So now so many options, and I really appreciate that. I would like to I see Margaret Goodwin here. Hi, Margaret, how are you doing? Margaret is on a regular basis, she's introducing people to Survival Mom and the whole idea of being ready. Who else do we have here? Just go ahead and mention in the chat room, and then if you're watching this on YouTube, then you can also leave comments there. I always answer them. So if you ever see one that goes unanswered, maybe you can notify me or track me down on Facebook or somewhere else. But I wanted to talk today about power outages, and I don't have the exact email. Someone wrote me an email, and in this email, I had sent out an email to my whole entire group. What about storing? Let's see, I'm not seeing it here really quickly. What about storing electronics? And this very nice woman, messaged me and said, why would I even want to store electronics? Because an EMP, a solar flare, a big enough one, would destroy anything electronic. And so I just want to say hi to Joseph and Melanie and Anissa. That's a beautiful name and a nice spelling. Anissa and Isabel from Portugal. Hey, Isabel, Portugal is on my short list for my bucket list. And Central Texas, Lynn, it's probably as hot in Central Texas as it is where I am. We're about 40 minutes northeast of Houston, and we are still suffering, suffering. Okay, and Jennifer, hey there. You're so welcome. One of these days I'll do a Facebook Live, and I'll tell you the story of the survival mom and how that all came to be. But let's talk a little bit about power outage and why you should consider protecting electronics. So first of all, let's talk about different ways that a power grid failure could happen. All right, first of all, it could happen from something called an electromagnetic pulse, EMP. And this is like the granddaddy of all survival scenarios. And it was very effectively encapsulated in Prepper Fiction in the book 1 Second After. And I do recommend that you read 1 Second After. That was just, I was on a help desk. I'll have to just wait for my help desk person. Maybe they'll be patient. And 1 Second After portrayed an EMP as just happening in an instant, which theoretically it would. And it's a surge of magnetic energy, electricity, that just surges. And it's invisible. It impacts, theoretically and potentially virtually anything that is electronic. And the damage done, according to 1 Second After, is virtually permanent. Well, that would scare the crap out of anybody. So everybody who reads 1 Second After just gets scared shitless. I mean, let's just admit it. So I remember when I first read it, my kids and I were going to go on a vacation, just the three of us. We had to leave my husband behind. And I was driving across the deserts of Phoenix, leaving Phoenix and heading north up into Utah and then cutting over into California. And just thinking with each mile, I was petrified. We could never get home. People just don't have oxen anymore and carts. There's probably maybe a covered wagon around somewhere in a museum. But the EMP picture paints such a horrible and terrifying scenario that pretty much everyone who reads 1 Second After and the sequels and all the many EMP-based fiction books that came later, you just accept it as true. So I am not nearly as convinced as I was when I first read that book that it's reality. And there are so many variables. When you write a book, when you write a fiction book in particular, you present the ideal, theoretically perfect scenario. Let's take a look at a romance novel. Everything happens just so, because that's part of the story. If it happened in reality, where some single gal is trying to meet someone here and there, and just, hits a dead end over and over again, there's not much of a story in that, or maybe there is. But the whole EMP scenario, as in 1 Second After, everything is absolutely perfect. And there are many people who have personally done experiments with electronic magnetic pulse. They generate them, on their own to see what kind of effects they have, and they disagree quite a bit with the scenario in 1 Second After. So for me, what is more likely for a power grid failure would probably be sabotage. That has already happened in California, where there was a really intense effort at sabotage there. And there were thousands and thousands of shell casings from the different rounds that were fired at this one. Was it a substation? It's been a long time since I've read it, but it's in the ebook, I believe, that I have. I'm giving you the link to, or the list, or sign up link for. So sabotage is a real possibility. Solar activity, maybe, but we usually have time before a solar flare to know, should things be protected. I do know, after a number of years ago, I was researching this and talking to someone who worked with power companies and security, and he said that the main reason that power companies don't do anything really to shield their equipment is it's just that the return on investment. It would cost a lot of money to do that from their perspective. And the chances of something major happening, like an EMP, they believe to be so slim, they don't bother. I did read, maybe someone over in the comments can leave a comment, but I do believe that at the executive level, I don't know if it was an executive order by President Trump or something, I did read that there was some, movement on that part to provide protection. of our electronics. So someone says, Lynn says, Lights Out by David Crawford. They are good. And Lynn says, just no one really knows too many variables. So there are. And like, for example, a variable, let's say that an EMP does happen. Well, if your car is parked in a garage, that's a variable. If it is parked on the outskirts of where, that pulse would reach, that's a variable. You just can't say that everything is going to be the same for everybody across the country. And so I think I've addressed this before on another Facebook Live, and maybe it's over on YouTube, but I just recommend, reading proper fiction and watching those kinds of movies and TV just to see, hey, it's kind of interesting to think about. My son has been watching a series called Last Man on Earth. It's on Hulu. I don't know if it's a Hulu original. And he just said, Mom, it just really gives you a lot to think about in terms of moral decisions. And so it's interesting and helpful for that. But to read a book and then just assume this is going to happen, okay, so let's assume it's going to happen. Because that actually is my topic today is why should you store electronics in a Faraday container? Well, first of all, a Faraday container is an enclosed metal container that does not have any kind of leak anywhere. So it is completely sealed. And it could be as simple as a cardboard box covered in aluminum foil, and then every edge of the aluminum foil, every edge of the box, just simply being taped closed. And one person you may want to follow over on YouTube is a NASA scientist. He's an electronic engineer, and I will get his name for you. I'll put it in the notes right here. But he, at his home, he's actually set up experiments where he has checked to see, is a microwave oven a good EMP container? And what this EMP container can do is it can protect electronics from something like an EMP. So you have your Faraday container. So why put electronics in there? If you think about it, whether it is, a solar event or an EMP, everything is going to be zapped, theoretically. All right, so your phones are going to be zapped, GPS units, computers, anything that has an electronic component. And why protect anything? Well, can you imagine just for a second? Let's say that has happened, and you have thousands of resource books stored on Kindles. And on your phone, you have apps. First aid apps, foraging apps, all kinds of apps. You have military manuals. You have all this stuff stored. You have music stored. You have photos stored. For homeschooling purposes, you have textbooks stored, and maybe entire curriculum. Our family used a curriculum called Ambleside Online when we homeschooled, and the whole entire curriculum is free online. So what if you had all those resources? Would that not give you an incredible advantage in the case of a power grid failure? And of course, the answer is yes. So I don't recommend making a huge deal out of this, where you're trying to find metal, to enclose entire rooms or something like that. But certainly a small metal, I love these. You can buy them on Amazon and at Home Depot. They're small metal buckets with a tight-fitting lid. And one of their uses is just to put by a fireplace, and that's where you would scoop out the ashes and, the bits and pieces of charred wood. However, those are actually handy as Faraday containers. And you can put things in there, things like an extra Kindle if you have one. Just load it up until it can't hold anymore. Load it up with classics, load it up with nonfiction books, load it up with history books, load it up with a copy of the Constitution, American history. Just load it up with anything that you think. Books, different kinds of homesteading skills, gardening and butchering animals, you name it. Load it up. If you have old cell phones, make sure you put the chargers in with it, but do the same. Put those in there for the same reason. There are lots and lots of different electronics, including LED flashlights. So those have an electronic component. Now, you're going to learn a whole lot more from my book. I did a ton of research for this about 4 years ago because my brain was just kept working. What if the power went out and I realize it? And it's a for sure thing. It's not like the time I called my husband when the power went out. I said, honey, is there an EMP? And he said, well, you're calling me on the phone. If there really was an EMP, I don't think the phone would work. So there really is one. What are the first things that you should do? And if nothing else, just begin thinking, well, what if it wasn't an EMP, but what if it was a power failure that lasted for a few hours or a few days? This book is going to help you. And by the way, I'm giving it away for free right now, but it's not going to be free much longer. So if I were you, I would snag it. And I think that link is just going to take you to a form on my blog. Fill it in, and the ebook will be sent to you. So everybody loved 1 second after. I know. Maybe I'm the only person who just questions the as though it was a gospel, like God's gospel truth. This is what's going to happen. I once had someone email me and say, Lisa, what are we going to do when we don't have electricity anymore? And I was like, what? I mean, it could happen. But let me just pose this little scenario to you. 1 second after came out, what, 10 or 11 years ago? All right. In that time frame of 10 or 11 years, how many families experienced job losses and didn't have money? How many of them experienced devastating medical diagnoses and they were completely unprepared for that? How many of them experienced deaths and they did not have the insurance coverage or whatever for that? How about flooding, natural disasters, house fires? All of these calamities, who only knows? I mean, maybe millions of these have happened in the time frame that the EMP book, 1 second after, was published. I want to know, what are you doing to get ready for a job loss? What are you doing to get ready if the economy all of a sudden turns worse? Or there's a sudden surprise bill that you're completely unprepared for? That is really what this whole lifestyle is about. It's not so much EMP, the power is going to go out. Sometimes I wonder with the guy with the tilapia in his pool, can you imagine the cleanup? I doubt very much he has tilapia growing back in his swimming pool anymore. So let's kind of back away from just extreme and say, you know what? I live in a house built in 1972. House fires are not all that uncommon around here. I want to be prepared for a house fire. I want all of us to know what to do if that happens and make sure we have things secured in a safe or somewhere else. I want to make sure that I know where my insurance documents are. I know it's boring. Actually, this month in Survival Mom Sisterhood, I gave them, I think, maybe one of the least fun challenges. They get a monthly challenge. And one of the least fun challenges, but it has to do with this kind of stuff right there. And so that is kind of my commentary and kind of my opinions and my advice about electromagnetic pulse, preparing for that. And I think that when you get your hands on the ebook, there's a lot to read there. I think it's a few dozen pages long, so it's nothing where it's just, one single thing. And Lynn and Brenda, you're asking about that. I can ask him myself. I know that he was going to. They're talking about Dr. Arthur T. Bradley. He actually produced and was selling like a unit that would protect your home from an EMP. And so I believe, let's see, we have a couple people here asking, I believe he was going to produce only so many of those. And I believe that's all he was ever going to produce. So maybe, if they didn't sell or he sold out of the ones that he had actually manufactured, I don't know, it'd be interesting. But he's active on Facebook, last I saw, so you can go ask him. So Cindy wants to know, how do we know we're getting hit with an EMP? To put all that stuff, so that's a good idea. That's a good question, Cindy. You put all that stuff in now. That's why I was saying, if you have old cell phones, put them, load them up with, helpful apps. There's so many good apps out there, identifying weeds, foraging, all kinds of apps, recipe apps. Download, I guess you would upload as many apps as you can on old phones, and then just put them in that container. You want to make sure that your Faraday container, though, is completely sealed. So once you have everything in there, you want to just tape it once. You can use just like electrical tape or masking tape, just tape it once, kind of press everything down, and that should take care of it. But Cindy, you would actually just put in extra things. If you have an extra digital camera, I have one and I used to use it like crazy before I started using my phone. So things like that, just, look around the house, what kind of electronics. And by the way, LED flashlights are susceptible if that should ever happen. And one more clarification, if there is sabotage is a different story in a lot of ways, because sabotage would just damage the source of the electricity as it is, gone out to neighborhoods and businesses and so on. So that is not going to damage electronics. All right, it's going to take the power down for a while. who knows how long, but that is how you do it. Sorry, distraction. A couple questions more. Joseph says, galvanized trash can, line it with cardboard, maybe spray foam, put electronics in anti-static bags. You can buy nice, very nice quality anti-static bags on Arthur T. Bradley's website. And if I recall correctly, it was called, his website was called Disaster Prepare. Let me see, Disaster Prepare. Yeah, Practical Disaster Preparedness for the Family. And he's written a number of novels, and he's done all kinds of things. I'm going to put this in a comment, and then I will also put it in the description of this little Q&A session. Coming up, by the way, if you are watching this in early-ish September, I'm going to be opening the doors for only the second time this year to Survival Mom Sisterhood. And if you want to be one of the first to know, go to survivalmomsisterhood.com. And that is where you get a challenge every month. You get a video lesson that is a mini masterclass. You get one of those a month, 30 to 60 minutes or so in printables. There's a library of printables. There is a ton of resources, but it is all designed to keep you from being confused and overwhelmed. survivalmomsisterhood.com. I will be opening that membership up in about 2.5, 3 weeks or so. So watch for that. Let me just look really quickly. People are talking about the economy, so on. Okay. I'm going to be putting this on Facebook. So if you watch this on Facebook, I want to say hi to you. And by the way, if you have topics you'd like for me to discuss on a future Facebook Live or YouTube video, just let me know. I'm going to take a look at your comments, answer them, and I will see you next time.